Welcome back for another Mock Draft Monday. With the regular season behind us, it's time to start focusing on your upcoming rookie drafts. So every single Monday, we will be having a rookie mock draft, and we'll be rotating between Superflex and one quarterback mock drafts to help everybody with their league formats. As we get closer and closer to rookie drafts, we will be getting deeper and deeper into this class, starting with 3-round mock drafts, then eventually moving to 4 and 5-round mock drafts. So if you want to stay plugged in on this rookie draft class and dominate your rookie drafts, be sure to make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a thing. But above all else, I do hope you all enjoy the video. Please leave a like if you do. Comment down below your thoughts on the video itself. As always, what prospects were drafted too high, who was drafted too late, and did we miss anybody in this mock draft? But hey, with all that said, let's get right to the content you came for. We have started this one quarterback mock draft. I'm in the 3rd spot. Nate, you are in the 6th spot. Mike, you are 111. Enjoy. We are mocking it up with our patrons. If you want to join us for a mock draft, head on over to patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Join the group that is 100 plus strong at this point, 125 strong at this point. It's a great time. We love all of our patrons. Shocker, shocker. Bijan Robinson goes 101. Who would have guessed that? Anybody? Any takers? Oh, I get sniped.
Wow.
So, I wanted to set myself up for this because I was curious to see if JSN would end up moving, but I do believe that obviously the 102 has to like him more. I'll take Gibbs here at the 103. This is a PPR, one quarterback. So I'll take the massive receiving upside and a good enough runner at this point in the draft, and a one quarterback. I'm pretty happy with it. What are you thinking? What are you hoping for at the 106, Nate?
You know, I kind of just picked the 106. You know, I didn't have any strategy. I just kind of figured I'd think on my feet. And, you know, all the guys I really want are gone at this point. So
just seeing how late he could get.
So I'm just going to see what happens here, you know. You guys can watch me scroll my queue here.
Sure.
You know, there is one guy that stands out to me that I want, and we're going to see if he makes it to me. Let's see. There's a running back I want. I guess I can say it because the J train probably can't hear me right now. Look at that. Nope. Wide receivers go first in this draft, leaving the running back value for me.
Yes.
So I'm going to go ahead and pick up my man.
Bigsby?
Tank Bigsby.
Woo-wee. Love it.
Tank Bigsby. I think he has the ability to be a workhorse in the NFL. I think he's a guy that can catch passes, can run inside the tackles, break off big plays, get the short yardage. I think Tank Bigsby brings the whole package to the table. He's athletic. He has the good frame, checks all the boxes. And in a world where workhorse running backs are rare, I think Tank Bigsby can be one. And therefore, at the 106, very happy picking him up here.
I think it's funny because we keep talking about how this wide receiver class, quote unquote, isn't as good. Well, you look at it with 3 wide receivers off the board in the first 5 picks.
Well, Mike, the question is it because wide receivers are good or because there's not a lot of good wide receivers?
Yeah. Scarcity.
Yeah. Well, as it turns out, I just got sniped at the 110. I was hoping Downs would fall to me. But we adjust, everybody. That is what we do. So
I was going to say this earlier, but what would you put the odds at that our first quarterback comes off the board at 111, Nate?
You know, I would have said pretty good odds. I don't know if Mike's there tonight, though, it looks like. But I would have thought the 111, it wouldn't be the first time we've seen Mike go CJ Stroud this year or something like that.
All in all, I think Michael Mayer in a non-tight end premium is a little early. We do see the quarterback. Josh Downs, I love Josh Downs at 110. If I can get him at 110 in all my drafts, I'm going to be a very, very happy boy come draft day. Mike, you went with the first quarterback off the board. Talk about that a little bit, and then we'll talk about the 112, which is a pretty big pick, if you ask me. But go ahead and talk about CJ Stroud quick.
Realistically, if that was my pick in an actual draft, I would have looked to move out of it. There wasn't really anything that I felt was super good value there. But again, that is not the purpose of this exercise. So I went with who I think is the best quarterback in this class at this moment, and that's CJ Stroud. A lot of people, you know, they bash people for taking a quarterback in the first round of a rookie draft. I don't have a problem with it. I did it when Trevor Lawrence was available. I think I had the 107 the year he came out, and I took what a lot of people believe was a generational talent at the time. Not saying CJ Stroud is Trevor Lawrence, but to me at this point was the best pick. Still too early for Devin Achane, in my opinion. And it was I wouldn't have taken Zay Flowers there. I thought Kayshon Boutte. I thought maybe Kendre Miller, a couple other guys, but I just went with who I feel would be the safest pick.
100%. Yeah, touching on the 112, Devin Achane, that is the absolute highest we've ever seen him go in a mock.
100%.
And while I believe in his athleticism, I think he's a very good runner. I actually graded him out as a better runner than anything to do with his pass blocking currently, and or passing in general, in the passing game, I should say in general. But that is really high, and I think you're asking a lot for a smaller back. And I don't want to be sizeless. I don't want to be the guy who just rags on his size, but it is a legitimate concern. You know, the reason why we're worried about his size is A, he's going to get thrown around in pass blocking, not that he's going to be used that way. It is a thing that takes him off the field for, you know, obvious passing downs possibly, or you need a scheme that, you know, they can split him out or do something with him in that respect. But, you know, how well is he going to hold up in the NFL when he starts taking hits and taking damage? You know, how clean is he going to be able to keep himself? That's the big concern I have. I have a tough decision here, sort of, I think maybe, but I'm going to go make my pick. Nate, feel free to touch on that or any of the other picks that have happened in the interim.
Yeah, you know, I like the Zay Flowers pick here. I think I'm a big fan of Zay Flowers, and I think this is where we're going to see him end up, actually. You know, I think we got here a lot quicker than I expected, but, you know, Zay Flowers, he just, you know, he's getting the first round hype now. You know, multiple NFL draft media members are dropping his name at the end of first round mock drafts. So Zay Flowers is a guy you have to keep an eye on at this point at the beginning of the second round. Then we saw Zach Evans go off. We know that we're not the biggest fans of Zach Evans around here. I'm glad to see that he's no longer going in the first round, or actually rather I'm upset to see that he's no longer going in the first round, because then he pushed down players for me to pick up later with value. But there goes another guy that makes me feel that way.
Yeah, so I went with Kendre Miller. I was torn between him and Kayshon Boutte. I think, you know, getting a running back here that I think is at worst going to be an early day 3 pick. I think he has a bunch of potential to go day 2 to a solid situation. Kayshon Boutte, I think, is more of a lock for day 2 than Kendre Miller at this point. But picking up a running back here in the second round, who I still think is fairly decent running back in more than one way, is able to contribute in the passing game. Not a ton, not his calling card by any stretch, but a guy I really believe in as a pure runner, and a guy who, you know, uses vision well and things like that. Unlike some of the running backs in this class that we have gripes on, always managing to create for himself. That's another thing I, you know, love about Tank Bigsby is the ability that he just creates for himself. And I think that's something you really need at the next level to be super viable. We see Bryce Young, our second quarterback, go at 205. Somewhat interesting. Nate, you pick up one of our favorite tight end prospects here on the channel. Easily my, you know, not necessarily my number one tight end, but definitely a favorite tight end in this draft class for me.
Yeah, I love Dalton Kincaid. You love Dalton Kincaid. Mike, I'm sure you love Dalton Kincaid at this point as well. You know, just really fits the modern NFL as a tight end, you know, pass catching slot, big slot. You know, he's a weapon for an offense. You know, he's might not be the most athletic guy, but Dalton Kincaid is going to be able to create mismatches at the linebacker position, at the safety position, and win with that. And another guy, you know, we were just talking about Zay Flowers and how he's getting first-round draft capital in some of these mock drafts. Dalton Kincaid is starting to as well. Mel Kiper released his first-round mock draft, and Dalton Kincaid was mocked to the Bengals for the 30th pick. You know, come on.
Yeah.
If Dalton Kincaid goes to the Bengals in the first round, Dalton Kincaid won't be available at the 206.
No chance. Yeah.
No chance.
Mike, we see Will Levis, who I know you're a fan of, come off the board, and some other players I know you're a fan of. I know you like Rashee Rice as well. I'm sure you were hoping for him possibly, or Will Levis. Who are you thinking here at 211?
Who am I thinking? Well, that's, you know, first of all, testing myself with the 111 was not a good idea because it's just not working out for me. I know that I need to at least be at the 110 to really get anything. Also interesting Anthony Richardson pick here. So right now what I'm thinking about is obviously there's some guys that will not make it back to me at the 311. I'm looking at maybe a Chase Brown, Kenny McIntosh going on me, Israel Abonaconda. So right now in this part of the draft, obviously, if you can't trade out, not the purpose of this exercise, you want to take someone who has a safe floor but a really high ceiling. That's what I'm going for in the late second round. So I'm going to take a guy who I think has the potential, if he bulks up a little bit, be a 3-down back in the NFL. Bob's in suspense. Take a Chase Brown at the 211.
Here we go.
Guy that I like a lot. I know Bob does too. Nate is fuming, I'm sure.
Nate, I would love to hear your thoughts on Chase Brown.
So Mike obviously hasn't spent too much time in the 2023 NFL Draft channel over on Discord because, Mike, I kind of like Chase Brown now.
Oh, my.
Yep.
I might not be as quite as high on him as the two of you, but I'm looking at Chase Brown as a 4th round guy who's a fringe day 2 player. And with that kind of upside, that kind of ability, I don't mind him at the back end of the 2nd round.
The 211, I was thinking Marvin Mims, Cedric Tillman, but these are guys that I haven't done full scouts on yet. Whereas I've done a complete scout on Chase Brown, and what I've seen, I know I like him. So I've done some preliminary film on Mims and Tillman, but until I'm more comfortable with an honest assessment there, and I really like Chase Brown. He was one of the first guys I scouted, and I like him a lot.
I am up here at the 3-3 with my last pick because I am a man of the people. I know that one of our patrons, the Chris Fix, Chris, this one's for you. I know you wanted to hear a little bit about Eric Ray, and I'm going to kick this to mostly Nate because I haven't done a full film scout on him. I just know of him and listening around. That's what you're here for, Nate. That's your problem. I'm well aware that he was somebody who was well liked at first, did not perform at Tennessee, transferred to Oklahoma, had a very good final year at Oklahoma. But I know he's somebody that was kind of wiped from people's boards for a while. Everybody kind of considered him dead in the water. Have you changed your opinion on that? Is there any shift there that we need to know about? Things like that. Feel free to dive into your pick as you make it as well. I don't want to burden you with too much at once. I still want you to make your pick and not make us auto pick it for you. But what do you got for Eric Gray?
Yeah, Eric Gray, definitely a guy who was kind of dead in the water for a lot of the Devy community. Was a guy that showed flashes at Tennessee, and people were excited when he went to Oklahoma. But his first year at Oklahoma, total flop. Really just went off the radar for a lot of Devy guys. Oklahoma, especially a team that brings in a lot of talent at the running back position. So we weren't, expecting Eric Gray to take hold of that position after he had just flopped in his first year there. But, time told the tale, and Eric Gray had a pretty good season at Oklahoma, while Oklahoma did not have a good season. And now he's being considered as, what I would expect to be a day 3 pick in the NFL. I haven't dove into his most recent Oklahoma season. I did watch last year's Oklahoma season when I was getting prepared for the 2022 draft class, and I was certainly not impressed. So I have not changed my tune on Eric Gray yet, but there is further research that is needed before I can give you what I think of him moving forward into this 2023 draft class.
Fair enough. I think that's respectable, Nate. Who are you picking here?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead, and I think there's a lot of value here in Parker Washington. I think people forgot about him because the sleeper ADP has him pretty low, but picking up a wide receiver who I expect to be a day 2 pick in the 3rd round, that's easy money. Parker Washington really checks all the boxes as a wide receiver. He fits what I think any team is going to be happy with a wide receiver. I don't think he's really landing spot dependent. I think he can really fit most schemes, most likely playing out of the slot, but a guy that I expect to score some fantasy points over his first couple of years.
I love that Parker Washington at the 3-6 is dumb.
Great value. I love my draft, actually. I think we can talk about that more afterwards, but I've made my final pick, so I love my draft.
I do too, and I just want to say one thing about your draft right now. A lot of people consider that area of the draft as the draft dead zone, but if I'm coming away from a 3-round rookie draft with Tank Bigsby, Dalton Kincaid, and Parker Washington, I consider that a successful draft. Just being completely honest here. And Bob loading up on all the running backs, man.
Typical.
Running backs, heavy, man.
That's how I operate. That's how I operate in the early preseason or pre-NFL draft. I always like drafting running backs, and like I said, that was that's you.
How are you doing, Bob?
Too.
You just got sniped on Tyjae Spears, I bet.
That was my dude. And then Deuce Vaughn wasn't on my radar here, and Kenny McIntosh was my backup. So okay, that's all right. I had my queue set up, so I'm going to take my man. Great in the open field. When Israel Abanikanda gets ahead of steam and is in open space, there's some defenders he can make a miss. Izzy could do a little bit of everything. I like him. I want to complete my scout on him, but everything I've seen so far, I've absolutely loved. He does have some deficiencies in his game. So I guess not everything I've seen I've loved. I've loved some things that I've seen.
I have a comp for Izzy Abanikanda,
okay.
And I think I have an official one in my scouting card, but I also have Izzy Abanikanda is what Zach Evans would be if he actually used his vision and used what was given to him.
You know what's funny about that?
Izzy works with wide open holes all the time. There is so rarely where he's actually in congested traffic that he always has all this space around him. And that's my biggest concern with him is I never saw him really have to like create for himself or do any of that. That was my biggest concern. I think he's athletic to a degree. I don't think he's super agile, I think is my issue. I think he's very fast. I think my comp for him was actually Kalen Ballage. I could be wrong. Nate, does that sound right?
Yeah, I believe that was your comp.
Okay, that was my official comp.
I can kind of see it. You know what's funny? I texted Nate yesterday and I said, Tajay Spears is what Zach Evans would be if he tried.
It's funny. So we're back in the second mock now. Bijan Robinson, no shock here. First off the board. We are waiting on the next pick. It's Jahmyr Gibbs. And Mike, you are ahead of me. I know you're disappointed. I think you were planning on or hoping to get him with your pick, maybe. Who are you thinking here, Mike? Who you got?
I'm thinking Jackson Smith and Jigba. Sorry, Bob, but I did this to you on purpose, if I could be completely honest.
It's too easy. Yeah, it's too easy, honestly. Like, there's nobody there, I think, that's warranted taking over JSN, in my opinion, at least.
There's really not. Like, I'm looking at my queue, and I'm just not seeing anybody that I really feel comfortable, or anybody else at this point feels kind of like a reach to me.
Yeah.
Jason just slides into that spot really good. I was kind of hoping, I think he went at the 102 last draft, did he not?
Yes.
Yeah, so I was kind of hoping for the same thing here and that I would get Jahmyr Gibbs. It didn't work out, but Jackson Smith and Jigba is no consolation prize by any means. We're still getting a high quality player, tier 1 guy from day one. Bob, 100%. What are you going to do now?
Don't worry. I have a consolation prize in mind. I'm taking my running back 3 off the board. I'm taking Tank Bigsby here.
Okay.
Player I really like. We discussed him in the last mock a little bit. A player that, when you see a player that doesn't have these super flashy numbers in the box scores and things like that, and isn't having these big breakaway plays and anything like that, you really have to dive into film more and more. And I had to watch like 7 or 8 games and like a couple times through in each game to really get a good feel of what Tank Bigsby is. In my opinion, somebody that can create on his own, athletic enough, offers enough in the passing game that he can, be relied upon to do that for you. And at the next level, Nate, you've touched on him being a, somebody that has workhorse type potential, or at least somebody that can command most of a backfield's work. We're not saying he's going to get 90% of the work, but we're saying he can get easily over 50%. And he's not a liability on passing downs or anything like that. He's a guy who can slot in. And I think that at the next level, a guy who can create for himself and do all these things is good for you, and it's good for your fantasy team. He stays on the field and gets more and more work. And I think if he was in another offense that had all of this stuff created for him, I think we'd be a lot less excited about a certain freshman running back that rhymes with Sean Hudkins and that plays for a school that's whole hiss school, university, little.
That was good.
Wordplay there off the top of my head.
Can I tell everyone who you're actually talking about so they know?
Sure. Yeah. Who was it?
Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss, everybody.
I thought I hit that better. But yes, Quinshon Judkins for Ole Miss outproduced Zach Evans, the player that I'm actually referring to as being, just somebody who I don't believe created well for himself. But let's move on with this mock. We see Jordan Addison. Nate, I know you love him. I like him too. I think he's a great wideout. Mike, I'm sure you're a fan as well.
Big fan.
Zach Charbonnet, we're all fans here as well. I think this is super high for him, or at least
until he gets the draft capital.
Yes, and I don't think it's high in right. Yes, I don't think it's high in terms of like value wise. I think it's actually like within the realm of possibility, but I think it's high in where we'll actually see him end up in mocks come April / or drafts come May. I think we'll see him closer to the back end of the first round. Well, we see Josh Downs, another favorite of the channel. Quentin Johnson, a guy who we all agree has a ton of upside. We see Devon Chain again beat his record going even higher at the 109.
I'm missing something here.
At the 112. I think the fact that he's moved up significantly in ADP helps. I think he's getting a lot of steam on Twitter right now. And I think, a lot of people are or want to discount these size concerns. And I'm sorry. I know it's one of those things that it's not like a good thing to be concerned about. Or it's not a realistic concern, but it's like when you realistically look at players who have not performed at that size, it's a long list of players who have actually been super viable in the NFL at that size. I know there's exceptions. I'm not willing to bank on it at the back end of the first round. Late second, mid-late second, I'm all about it. But I will not be advising anybody to do this with Devontae Chain at this point. Come draft time, even if he gets day 2 draft capital, I'm not real sold. I'm not going to trust a coach to get him in the right position and things like that. Go ahead.
5'9", 185 before Nate makes your pick. I'll make this brief.
Yeah.
And we look at, here's a good comp, kind of. Kenneth Gainwell's 5'9", 200. Kenneth Gainwell's a 5th round draft pick. We're talking about situational players. And at the 109 or the 112 in our last mock, you're taking a situational player when you have guys behind him in this mock, Sean Tucker, Michael Mayer, guys that are looking to be full-fledged starters that are going to get you guaranteed fantasy points most likely every week. Let's see what Nate does here at the 112, but I'm just out on A-Chain at that ADP. That's too rich for me.
Yeah, at this point, the 112 kind of sucks. I feel like I'm going to have to take a reach here. I've actually, my top couple tiers of rookie ranks are gone, and I have like a tier of 6 players that are now available. And I'm going to have to just pick one and pull one out. I'll be honest, Dalton Kincaid's in that tier, and I'm thinking about him here, but
I hate it.
I'm going to go Bryce Young. He's my quarterback 1. I think, hey, this is my championship team. I got a good quarterback 1, but I like Bryce Young's potential. I like wherever he's going to end up. I think he's going to be a good player. I think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a guy that a franchise is going to try to put weapons around, and they're going to put investment into Bryce Young and what is around him. And I think as long as that happens, I think he's going to put up points. And with just no one I like at that point, I was really hoping for Michael Mayer at the 112. I didn't think I was going to get that before, when I was looking at the 112. But when he was still there at the 111, I was hoping to get him. But with all my favorite guys gone at that point, Bryce Young is the guy I'm going to go ahead, even though it's one quarterback.
I don't hate that move at all, Nate. I think that's fine. I think that is a spot in one quarterback we might be looking to move down.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be guys falling that, I can guarantee with the list we have that we're working with, there's going to be guys that are falling that people are going to want to trade up for, that people see more potential in than you do. That's going to be a spot. Something I wanted to touch on with my pick at 104, that's going to be a spot where I think you take 104 to 108/109 in most drafts. And I think that's pretty all similar value, where if you're at the 104, the only real benefit or difference in value between 104 and 109 is you get to pick your guy. But at the end of the day, I think you end up with similar value. So that's going to be a huge trade down pick for me. I think that's a good one to start with. I think 112 is probably the next one you see where you're really interested in trading down, because I don't think there's a lot of difference between these players. Mike, you did snipe me a little bit there. I was looking to take Kayshon Boutte.
Sorry, bud.
But that's okay. I will take somebody that I have a tough time looking at value in the face here and not drafting Zach Evans, even though I don't like him as a prospect and anything like that. But
that was almost my pick.
Same at the 112.
It's one of those. Go ahead.
Talk about Zach Evans quick. And here's why he wasn't my pick. I don't like his hands. He fumbles too much, and he's throwing hands the ball a lot when it's being thrown to him. Now, Zach Evans in space, he's got a second gear, but there's times where what I see is an athlete playing football, not an athletic football player. And some of the mistakes, I think he's going to get good draft capital, and I think he's going to be drafted highly in rookie drafts. And he's a guy that if I could get him late enough, like I would look at Zach Evans right now, the 207 or back. I don't think he's going to be there. I'm okay to miss out on him at that point.
Yeah.
I took a guy who's going to get good draft capital in Kayshon Boutte. And if he's a wide receiver, if his ceiling is Devontae Smith at the 2-3, you're going to be fine with that. I don't know if it's going to be that good, but that's what I'm going for here.
I think, with Zach Evans, I'm not sold that he's a day 2 pick for one, because I think that is going to show up, that effort and things like that. I have a real tough time passing on him here, but I'm going to go with a player I like more. I'm going to go Dalton Kincaid. This is a guy who I still don't necessarily believe that he's a first round pick. I think he's a second round pick more than likely. Just based off of, I think right now, with a lot of mocks, you'll see a lot more sexy offensive picks in the early rounds. And then you'll get more and more of these defensive players and offensive linemen that find themselves in the mix more and more as we get closer to the actual draft, because right now people care about interesting. And it's not interesting to have your favorite team draft an offensive lineman. It's very interesting to have them draft, say, a sexy tight end who is very good, who will be the complete piece to make this offense unbeatable forever. But at the end of the day, I don't know that he's a first round talent. I love Dalton Kincaid. I think he's somebody that if 5 years down the road, we look back and be like, hey, he could have been a first round pick, I wouldn't be surprised. But I don't think he's a first round pick come that time. But right now, I have Dalton Kincaid. Nate, you know this. I have him rated and graded very highly, higher than a lot of my position players in this draft. Very big on Dalton Kincaid, much higher than Zach Evans in my prospect rankings. The only reason I would take Evans is because he's a running back, and I think he's going to get decent enough draft capital. And at this point, I think he's starting to turn to a value. I just have a tough time going against what I believe in him as a prospect.
Bob, did you say that you don't think Zach Evans is a day 2 pick?
I don't know that he is. I think there's a good chance he gets drafted there, but I don't think it's a guarantee at this point.
So right now on NFLmockdraftdatabase.com, and again, there's people doing mock drafts, but it's a resource for us. Sure. Right now, he's a projected 3rd round pick. So, and we're talking, his best rank was 32nd, which is the last pick in the 1st round. So he's slowly creeping back as people are doing more scouting and stuff like that. So Bob, it looks like you're right. I mean, I feel like if he's a 4th or 5th round pick, I feel like that's right. But here's the thing, then I'm okay taking if he fell to me in the 3rd round of a draft, I'm okay with taking a shot on him there and throwing him on a taxi squad somewhere. And if he shows out and somebody wants to offer me a deal for him, I'm going to take it.
So we see Zach Evans come off the board. We see Rashee Rice come off the board, and then Zay Flowers. Anything to touch on there? We've already beat Zach Evans to death, it seems like, at this point. So I think we can pass on him. I think Rashee Rice is a pretty solid value at this point. Then we have Zay Flowers come off the board, Jalen Hyatt, which I think, whether he should be or not, Biletnikoff Award winner last season, looking to get first-round draft capital. It sounds like I don't necessarily buy it. I don't necessarily love it. Buy it, Hyatt, get it. Then we see a little mini quarterback run happening here with Anthony Richardson, Will Levis. Chase Brown, your new favorite player, Nate, came off the board right before you. What are you looking to do here at 112?
Yeah, I'm looking to pick up a wide receiver. I'm not quite sure which one I want to pick up here. I'm between Parker Washington, who we've already talked up, and I've already acquired in the 3rd round of the last draft. But I'm also looking at Xavier Hutchinson because I think at this point I'm happy taking Xavier Hutchinson. I think he is a week away from taking off. What's coming up is the Senior Bowl. And Xavier Hutchinson is going to look really good at the Senior Bowl. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Hutchinson here. This pick's going to look good a week from now.
I love it. X-Man, my man.
I like that a lot.
You see Cedric Tillman come off the board right after, a player who I know you're a somewhat fan of too as well, Nate. And I think that's who I was actually thinking you were going to go with there. But hey, I love the Hutch respect too. Mike, what are you looking for here at this pick? No Chase Brown to deal with.
No Chase Brown. Womp womp. I mean, I'm thinking at this pick, I'm kind of leaning Tajay Spears a little bit.
Okay, I see you.
I like him a lot. I just had to fill out my scouting card for him, but I finished scouting him at lunch today. I like what I see there. And I feel like he's a guy where if he got hey, let's go back to Zach Evans. If he got picked in the same round as Zach Evans, I'm leaning Tajay Spears. And people will be like, why, Mike? Zach Evans was a 5-star recruit. Tajay Spears was not. And I'm going to tell you this. Well, he played at Tulane, so he's not getting the hype that he deserves. And people are going to be like, well, the competition. Well, watch the Cotton Bowl. I think it was the Cotton Bowl versus USC. Yes, Bob, what's this?
I think the other thing there is when you discuss where you're going to have to draft them, Zach Evans is still going to go well ahead of Spears if they get the same draft capital in the NFL.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any doubt in my mind on that. The Zach Evans love is strong. And, I get it. He's a player that has potential in things, but I've seen enough on film where I'm just like, I have concerns and I think they're legitimate. I don't want to be in or out entirely on anybody right now. Mentioned it a couple times in the draft so far, but at that point, I like your pick of Spears if he's there on the board because it leaves somebody I like on the board.
See, Derek
There's a couple players I like.
Derek's sweating right now. He's having a hard time. I know he's online, so
yeah. Well,
see, and, right now, Tyjae Spears is a projected 5th round pick.
That's a big difference. Oh, he made his pick.
Nice.
That's a nice pick. That's a nice pick.
Marvin Mims pick, though.
Yep.
I think Marvin Mims is a good value across drafts right now.
And I got my guy, and this is one of those things where I love drafting 3rd round running backs. Nate doesn't. I do. I think this is the perfect time to load up on these value running back guys because, like I always say, at some point in every season, every team, or at least a couple teams that you have, you end up playing 0 RB, and it sucks because as well as I do, you have these plans, these foundations laid preseason, like this is my team going in, this is why I'm going to win the championship, and then injuries pile up. It just happens. That's part of the NFL. That's part of fantasy football. So if you have Tyjae Spears, Israel Abanikanda, and whoever else comes in this round after that, sitting on your taxi squad, you don't have to overpay in a trade. You don't have to try to scrape somebody up off the waiver wire. That's how you win leagues. That's where you find your Isaiah Pacheco's, your Tyjae Spears. And then when you use these guys and you flip them at the end of the season because people buy in the hype, and then you use those picks that you acquired and you get elite talent in the next season with them.
Yeah,
Draft your ceiling in the 3rd round. But seriously, it doesn't matter what position. At this point, you're probably not drafting a starter. If you're drafting guys in your 3rd round of your rookie draft, like I need to get a starting player here, you need to seriously reevaluate your process and how you're scouting players and how you're building your team. It's not meant to be offensive, but these aren't long-term solutions to any roster. And of course, there's going to be guys that end up being good. Terry McLaurin was a 3rd, 4th round pick the year that he came out. So there are exceptions to the rules. But for the most part, these are not starting caliber players long term.
So after your Tyjae Spears pick, I went Parker Washington, a guy that we all really like here. Solid wide receiver. I'm kind of delighted to see him on the board at this point. Then we see Izzy Abanikanda come off the board, a guy I think has some potential we can all agree with, but there are some holes. Nate got sniped there at the 112. It's okay.
Twice. Got sniped twice.
Fair enough. Then, yeah, double up, actually. Yeah, for sure. Then we see a guy who I don't think we've even had come off the board in Superflex drafts, maybe once, Hendon Hooker. Is a guy who comes off in a 1 quarterback at the middle of the 3rd round. And then we see Darnell Washington. Finally come off the board. A guy who the YouTube comments, I know you are all pleased because you've been waiting for Darnell Washington. Nate, do you want to touch on him before you fumble through your last pick because you got double sniped?
Sure.
I know you like Darnell Washington.
I like Darnell Washington a good bit. He's a day 2 pick. I think, he was getting some 1st round hype during the season, but the production just isn't there, I don't think, for him to be a 1st rounder. He's got a lot of physical talent, though. Sure. He's about 6'8", I believe. 260-something pounds or so. He has enough athleticism to break open the seam, get down the field. He's got long arms. He's a threat in the red zone. He's a guy that I'm very interested to see how a team uses him. Darnell Washington, he's athletic, but he's not an elite, smooth athlete. He does look a little clunky at times out there. And I wonder, is he more Jelani Woods or is he more Kyle Pitts? I think he's a bit more on the Jelani Woods side. I think the potential is there, but he's going to be a little raw to start, and it's going to depend on the situation and how the team develops him, I think.
And then we see Kenny McIntosh come off the board, followed by Deuce Vaughn. A couple of our favorites here on the channel, at least I like Jaden Reed a lot. I know you guys do as well. Nate, I know you're big on the Nathaniel Tank Dell train. You get double sniped here at the end, but you get another tight end you like. Wrapped up with Luke Musgrave.
Yeah, I was hoping to get Jaden Reed. I said before the draft, I was like, I'm expecting to get Jaden Reed at the 312. My backup plan was Nathaniel Tank Dell. Neither one of those guys made it to me, so I go with my backup plan at tight end, and that's Luke Musgrave, who, speaking of guys who are about 6'8", Luke Musgrave is one of those really tall guys as well. And despite only playing 2 games this season, he put up big numbers. And you look back at his career numbers, and he's been a stud for Oregon State since he stepped on the field. I love Luke Musgrave because he is a great value at the tight end position. He kind of reminds me of some of the tight ends we have now on our teams, like Cade Otton. Greg Dulcich, some of these mid-round tight ends that we found that have potential, have gotten onto the field and are making an impact. I think Luke Musgrave steps into that kind of role in fantasy football. And we're going to be looking at him as a guy that we'd be willing to trade, a mid to late second round pick for by the end of next season.
Anything else to add on this draft, boys?
I like Kenny McIntosh at the 3-8. Really good pass catching back.
Yeah, I like Kenny. To be quite honest, I'm not thrilled with my draft, but I think the expectation is when you're drafting from the 112, you're going to have to be really lucky to be thrilled about your draft, because you're Bryce Young. Yeah, I consider him a first rounder even in a 1 quarterback draft, but it's not a pick I'm super excited to make, unless my team really, really needs quarterback. But at that point, I might, float my late first out there for a quarterback rather than picking up a quarterback in a 1 quarterback league. Xavier Hutchinson, I like him a lot, but I feel like I can probably get him in the 3rd round. Sure. But like I said, I think, in the short-term future, this is going to be a good pick. So I'm pretty happy with him there. And then I do like Luke Musgrave, but it's the tight end position. It's not as sexy. This is not a sexy draft, but it's a rather solid one.
I want to talk about Bob's draft. Tank Bigsby, Kincaid, and Parker Washington at the 4 spot.
Like my draft
it was the exact same draft as Nate's, just 2 spots earlier.
Really?
No kidding. Exactly the same draft. How about that? I didn't even notice that till right now.
My bad. Didn't mean to copy it. Just players I like. Players we both like.
Look at Bob and I on the same page.
I really like that draft, just like I did in the last one we did. And I'm not going to lie. I like my draft too. JSN, Keyshawn Boutte, and Tyjae Spears. 3 guys I like.
I think we drafted well. I think the point you brought up, Nate, with not loving your draft, and this is something I always try to stress when we discuss audits and things like that, is always building your asset pool so you don't have, 3 draft picks to work with. Like, you want more draft picks in every draft to work with. And I think most drafts end up that way, but I think it's something that, when you end up walking away with having 6 picks in a draft, say it's a 3-round draft, say you have 2 picks in each round, you're able to play around the board a little bit more and things like that. You're able to pull more players and play with more value. And if you are the 112 and you won the league and you have other draft picks, by default, the other draft picks you have are going to be better than your own.
Yep.
So this is a case of build up your asset pool so you're not only drafting or only able to draft from the 112, because it's hard. It's probably going to be hard to trade up from that spot, in all honesty, because as I discussed earlier, that's kind of a gross spot to, you need to find the right person at that spot. At the 104, like I discussed earlier, there's going to be a lot of people that want to trade up to that spot. There's probably 6-7 people. The rest of the draft board in the first round wants to trade up to that spot if they can. For the 112, you're kind of getting into the next group of players in a 1 quarterback where you need the right person to be interested. Yeah. So I think that just emphasizes really getting in on adding multiple draft picks and capital. And unless you guys have anything else to touch on, I'll wrap it up with saying, as I mentioned already, I know we trash talk Zach Evans a lot. And, players that we're really in on and players that we're really out on and things like that. But I do want to emphasize out there to people who are watching that try to keep an open mind throughout this entire draft process. I think there's very few occasions where you should really just be like, I'm out on that player forever. We're going to see a lot of things, and we're going to learn a lot of things as we get along and as we dive deeper and deeper into film, and we have more and more draft process and smoke come out about the draft and the draft actually happening. The big thing is going to be where you can get players at values and things like that is going to play a huge role. Not necessarily, like I said, with, Zach Evans versus Tyjae Spears, if they're both drafted in the same round, Zach Evans is still going to go significantly further ahead of Spears regardless of landing spot. So that's just something to keep an eye on. And like I said, keep an open mind long term. You shouldn't be out on these guys. We have 3 months before the draft. We have some time to really dig in and form opinions and not be too set one way or the other at this point. I think it's a little early for that.
Zach Evans is this year's Drake London.
Yes. That is confirmed. Well, that is it for the video today. I do hope y'all enjoyed. Please leave a like if you did. Comment down below your thoughts on the video itself. Like I said before, who's drafted too high? Who was drafted too late? And did we miss anyone on this list? Make sure you're subscribed to stay plugged into this rookie class and dominate your rookie drafts when the time comes. And if you want more information on rookies right now, be sure to go check out patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind, where we have live rookie rankings right now. Not to mention an amazing community Discord, as well as more bonus content. And if you enjoyed this video today, be sure to check out the video on your screen now. I'm sure you'll love that one too. But hey, that's going to be it for us today. We will see y'all in the next one. But until then, y'all have a good one.